Hello, everybody. My name is Deborah Carter. I am a librarian at the San Marcos Public Library, and I am super stoked to be in another program with some financial advisors who very graciously are giving their time and expertise to us who have a lot to learn. I know I do myself. So we have with us today Trish Wilder and Shalana Poole, both financial advisors, and I read on your website more than 30 years of combined experience. So that is some pretty solid expertise. They help their clients work towards financial independence through planning, which is, I think, what we're going to touch on today. And their mission is to build long-term relationships as trusted and knowledgeable advisors through education, training, integrity, and outstanding client service. So I think that's part of why we're so lucky as this education component for the community and for our library patrons in this series of YouTube videos that you can find the other ones also on our San Marcos Public Library YouTube channel. So I just totally appreciate y'all helping us level up in our financial knowledge. It changes lives, I know. So I'm going to turn it over to y'all whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being on. Hello to everybody that's here and everyone that's watching. Trish and I are with Flashpoint Financial Services. We are financial advisors through LPL, and they're very, very happy to be partnered with the San Marcos Public Library and gracious that we have been asked to help further the education of the community when it comes to finances. We definitely want this to be informative for you guys, but would love the opportunity to answer any questions that you have. I think it was stated before that if you have any questions, please add them to the chat. We will try our best to address them at the end. And then there will be a separate one-on-one question and answer period if you would like to ask something a little bit more personal later on in the program. As Ms. Deborah Carter mentioned, I am Shalana Poole and this is Trish Wilder. We dedicate ourselves to our clients in the community by helping them advance down their financial journey. And one piece of that is educating. And we're at the beginning. The beginning of the whole journey is the four-letter word budgeting, which I know is not a four-letter word, but it's definitely treated as one from time to time. So with that, I would like to go ahead and get started and say thank you to Trish again for being here, and want to start the conversation, or at least the topic here of budgeting, by asking all of you, do you know where your money is going? And if the answer is no, then that's why you're here. So we want to be able to help you find ways to know where your money is going and the importance of budgeting, and how having a budget in place or a cash flow analysis or a cash flow function of your financial life. Sorry, I drew a blank there for a second. It's so important to your financial journey. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? Thank you. So why budgeting? Why is this so important and why are you here? So for most people that we talk to, it's a lot of the questions stem around, how do I get a handle of my financial life? And the basis of that is knowing your overall budget, meaning what you have coming in and what you have going out, and how do you utilize all of those resources to meet all of your financial goals. Goals vary for everybody. Some people have them, some people don't quite know how to develop those goals, but it all comes back to, in order to get from point A to point B, whatever your point A is, to get to whatever your point B is, you have to start somewhere. And budgeting is the foundation of that start. It's the way that we use our resources to help meet everything that we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. And if I can add one more thing.
Absolutely.
The question or the comment that we get the most since this pandemic started is, I should have done a better job at budgeting. And there we have it. We're going to jump right in and look at this, because you can start today. And if you've already started a budget, you can make it stronger.
So there are essentially 6 steps to creating a budget that we will go over, and it's really the basis of the basis right here. The purpose, again, of this educational moment is for us to give you a high-level view of what a budget is, how to create one, how to not let it be intimidating. And so we're going to keep this down to six small goals that you can do to create your budget. First things first is to come up with your goals. What are your goals? And again, if you don't have any to start out with, that's okay, because working through creating a budget could also help you come up with those goals. But for some people, they do have goals of, I just need to make sure I have enough money to cover that unexpected expense. Or I need to make sure that if for whatever reason I lose my job, how do I cover myself until the next job comes along? And then as it stays here on the screen, how do I pay off this debt? What is the best way for me to do that? Well, starting with your goals is really important. And it's not just having a fluff goal. We want something that's really tangible, something that has a numeric value to it, and then an end date associated with it. As indicated here, you could see in these 2 examples, having a $1,000 emergency fund built up by a certain date, in this case, April 1st, that's really important, because what you want to do is know that timeline, take the value of what you're trying to achieve, divide it by that timeline, meaning if it's a year from now to reach April 1st again, then you take that $1,000 and divide it by 12, and that moment becomes a small portion of your budget going forward. So here's the start of creating that budget, and that's knowing where it is that you want to go in the future. The second part is knowing your income, which is really important. And a lot of people will get that paycheck and spend it on what they have to spend it on, and get into this particular cycle of receiving the paycheck, spending it, receiving the paycheck, spending it. But you also have to know what you're receiving, right? So if you are receiving a paycheck and it's a W-2 and your employer is taking out taxes and you're paying for insurance through your employer, you're paying for a retirement plan, the number you want to work with creating your budget is that net amount. So for some people, if you ask them, well, how much do you make a year? They always have a nice round number of, and I'm just going to use a random number here, $85,000. Well, that $85,000 is typically your gross pay. And then from that, you have to start subtracting the things that I mentioned earlier, everything that comes out of that paycheck before it hits your bank account, right? And so that number that hits your bank account is your net pay. That's the number you want to use to start creating your budget. For those of us that are self-employed, again, it's the number that comes to you after you've paid all your expenses. And that's the number you're using to create your overall budget. You have to also think about things that aren't really traditional. Maybe you have a side business and you're getting paid through one of the cash apps like Venmo, or name them all out there. I'm sure there's plenty cash app, but you want to make sure you have a hold of those as well. So point number 2 is know your income sources, but know which part of your income that we're starting out with. The third step in this is to know your monthly expenses. Okay, this is where we always have aha moments with our clients. We all know that we're spending. And for some people, we think, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much that I don't have enough extra room in there. Well, oftentimes it's a moment that you have to take. It's a stop. Let's draw a line in the sand. Let's look back to where we were or what we've done over the last 3 months and look at all of our expenses that are coming out of our bank account, right? Track all of those. And these are the necessary expenses. These are the occasional expenses. So some of us pay for our car insurance on a semi-annual basis. So it's one lump sum that comes out every 6 months, or doctor visits, or things that are just don't come up all the time. Also include subscriptions that you may or may not have signed up for and forgot to cancel. Make sure we're including those as well. There are tools for tracking your monthly expenses. Trisha and I have a tool that we use with our clients to help with that. We literally go through it and help our clients identify what their monthly expenses are, and help identify what category they go through, more often than not, we're surprised at the aha moment that everyone happens to go through. So step number 3 is, let's look at our monthly expenses. No judgment, just take a look at them. Don't make any changes yet, just take a look at them. The next part of this is to create a realistic budget. So based off of what you've done so far, we've created a goal, divided it by whatever time period so we can get a monthly amount to reach that goal. We've looked at our income and we've looked at our expenses. What you want to do is take that income, it sounds very rudimentary, but take that income, subtract all of those expenses and subtract the goals. And that's the amount that you have to work off of to create another goal or to modify your cash flow, your budget. That's the amount you have to work off of. This is the beginning of making your realistic budget. Now, for some of us, that number may be negative. For some of us, that number may be positive, but it's the aha moment that helps us get to the next step. We have to know this number so that we know what adjustments we need to make. Now we can go. Thank you. So if for whatever reason that number is negative at the end, once you've done that mathematical equation, that's when it's time to start looking a little deeper. And what we can do is look at all of our expenses and start prioritizing what's really important right now, meaning, do we have the rent money, the mortgage money, the insurance, the car notes? Do we have all of those expenses in place? Let's put a priority to those. Those are top. We can't modify those. And then start whittling down the categories to see what part of this is modifiable. I will stop for a moment, and I've told the story so many times, I'm sure Trish can probably mouth it as I'm saying it, but I did this for myself many years ago. And I went through and literally wrote down every transaction that I was doing, both from my debit card, looking at my bank statements, and then also tracking cash, which is a big hole that people tend to miss. What I found, my biggest takeaway at that time was I was spending a lot of money on gum and ATM fees. It's significant, it added up. I was in college at the time too. So that's when every dollar really mattered, as if it doesn't now, but that's when I was really trying to make it stretch. But by doing this exercise myself, I realized, okay, I need to make some adjustments here and understand why is it I have this addiction to gum, but that's a different story. Another way to create your budget and to re-look at how to make that bottom number positive is, let's look at our income. What are the different ways that we can increase our income? This may be an opportunity to look at your existing career and have some real good conversations about, is it time to ask for a raise? Is it time to look at ways to increase our income through other means? Meaning, do we get an allowance for a cell phone, for instance? This is a time to get creative and start looking at, well, how do I work to increase my income? And at the same time, we have to look at those expenses that we can make those adjustments to. Go ahead.
And absolutely, if we're business owners, are we taking the right tax deductions and visiting with a CPA to know that as well?
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Great point, Shalana.
Very true. The last step in creating a budget is to stay connected. There's this website here, americasaves.org, and it really identifies the steps that people are doing, the stats, that Americans have when it comes to saving. What you want to do in creating your budget is to have an accountability partner. Trish and I service that with our clients that want us to serve in that particular role. We serve as full service financial advisors, and one piece of the puzzle that we always start with is, let's make sure your cash flow is positive instead of a negative cash flow. Because if it's negative, then we won't be able to get to where you want to go. And so we will revisit this on a regular basis. How is your spending? What adjustments are we making? How important is it to make a positive cash flow? How important is it for us to save for whatever goal that you're trying to save? And we'll help you prioritize that. But you need to stay connected with the right resources to help you stay on track. Usually I draw a parallel when it comes to our health and our weight. There's a lot of talk about that in America. And a lot of people tend to do better with managing their health, their weight, their mental, all of that when they're connected to another individual, whether that's a professional, whether that's a website, whether that's a group of people. It's always good to have a level of accountability with someone that is there to work with you and keep you motivated to move along your journey.
And also stay connected with your spouse. If you're married and you're budgeting, this is so important to have regular meetings with your spouse, or if you're budgeting with your parents, to do that as well. When I took over my mom's finances after she had a stroke, it was imperative that I had these meetings with her to remind her, hey, here's what we're working towards. Here's what we need to save for as we move through her budget.
Absolutely. Communication is key. Communication and honesty is key. So how do we move forward? Let's look at a couple of steps of what we need to do to move forward. So usually if clients don't have a goal to start out with, and they come to us and say, I just need to understand my financial position. What do I do now? Once we get to that point of understanding where they are, again, it starts with looking at their current cash flow, whether it's negative or positive. Then we can say, okay, you had this one goal of understanding where you are financially. Let's start building in some other goals. So we will help you, or the right person that you're speaking with can help you develop some goals. One of which is to build an emergency fund. It is a rule of thumb to have somewhere between 3 to 6 months of living expenses, not income, saved up. And why is that important? Again, if you were to unexpectedly lose your source of income, what we want to do is have that bucket of money readily available to cover our necessary living expenses while we're transitioning to the next source of income. So what does that look like? That looks like all of the expenses that are not discretionary. So regularly eating out, getting your clothes dry cleaned, if that's a thing people do now. Things of that nature, we want to make sure that's not built into the emergency fund. What we want to do is look for those things that we have to pay for if we had an income source or not. Those are the things that we want to make sure we have in that emergency fund. And it's really important to know where that emergency fund should lie, right? We don't want to take a lot of risk in there. We do want it to be in some form of a cash account, preferably a savings account, hopefully earning a little bit of interest, depends on the interest rate environment. Keep it separate from your regular checking account. Things can get overlapped, and when you're keeping your emergency fund in the same bucket as the fund that you're using to pay all of your expenses. So usually we'll say, let's just keep that separate. Let's put this in a different account. We want it in an account that is easily accessible without fees, without transaction costs, without any penalties. And again, preferably earning interest if we're in the right interest rate environment. This is just some statistics on emergency savings in America. As you can see, most of America is either they don't have emergency savings at 23%, or they simply don't know what they need to do. But then another portion, which is really phenomenal, has more than 6 months saved up for living, 6 months of living expenses saved up for an emergency. That's really phenomenal. So ask yourself, where do you lie when it comes to that particular goal, which is really, really important, because things happen, accidents happen, things happen. And what we want is, while we're trying to develop and move along our financial journey, and one of those unexpected expenses happen, we don't want to have to take a step back just to take care of it. Things to include in there are your deductibles for your cars. If you happen to get into a car wreck, where's that money going to come from to pay for that deductible? That's included in your emergency fund. Those types of things of that nature, as well as medical deductibles. Those need to be included as well.
And you can see too that having these things available actually saves you from using credit to extend your credit, which causes more debt, because we want to save those as well. So make sure you're doing that as a favor to yourself and to your family to reach these goals.
Very, very, very good point. I like this. The next step on how to move forward is pay yourself first. I like to think of this, and I say this whenever I possibly can, but you're just as important as that light bill that has to be paid. You're just as important as the mortgage that has to be paid. You're just as important as the groceries you have to buy. So yes, all of those things are important. Include yourself in your budget. Include a payment to yourself. Include a payment to your retirement, your IRA, an employer-sponsored retirement plan, another cash account that you can actually save for yourself. Paying for that or saving up for that emergency fund is also paying yourself first. All of those are just as important. When I think of moving along the financial journey and just trying to be comfortable with who we are when it comes to our finances, oftentimes I'll find that the individual that has a little bit more uncertainty is one that don't put themselves as important as everything else. So they don't have a bucket that they can rely on. They don't have that safety net that they can fall back on. But again, you're just as important as some of those bills you have to pay as well. So pay yourself first.
And two things. Did you know that if you contribute to your employer-sponsored plan, it's a pre-tax contribution? What this means is if you make $1,000 a week, but you contribute $100 to that employer plan, you're only taxed by the IRS now at $900 instead of the full $1,000. So now you're contributing to yourself, paying yourself first, planning for the future, but also lowering your taxable income at the same time and protecting that. So we encourage you to do that. And also remember to review those plans as well, which is something that we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. This next step here is one that I will put my blinders on because I know for a fact I no longer spend a whole lot on gum and ATM fees. I spend way too much eating out. It's just my vice. I know it. I will admit it. So when it says stop eating out too much, that's one that's really difficult for me to do. In fact, that's one that's very difficult for many of us to do. So we recognize that, right? Which we understand the impact it makes on the overall budget. And because of that, it's really important that this slide is here, right? If we could think about ways to still enjoy ourselves, and I'm not saying don't eat out at all, it's really important. It's a social thing that should be done. But what we want to do is find ways that we don't eat out so much, especially if it's hitting your budget to a point that it's not providing a positive cash flow or very lean cash flow. So you can find ways to cook at home, make it fun. If you don't like to cook, well, that comes to a different point, but we just have to find ways to really limit this particular action item or budget item on our cash flow sheet. One thing that I thought was really interesting in being creative about this is the grocery list. I'm really bad at making a grocery list as well, full disclosure. I will make it and leave it on the kitchen counter or in the car when I go grocery shopping. So then what happens is I'm grocery shopping and I randomly pick up things that aren't on my grocery list, and I get home and end up having 5 bottles of ketchup. That's neither productive for anybody. So what we need to do is be creative here. I read somewhere that if you have a buddy, a girlfriend, a friend, of whatever, that you trust to go grocery shopping for you, you two should swap grocery lists. Have her buy everything that's on your grocery list, he or she, and have the other person and have yourself buy their grocery list. Therefore, it all has to stay together and you keep on your budget from there.
And it may save you some time.
May save you some time. It's fun. Find cheaper gas and entertainment. The point of all this really is to really find ways to cut your expenses and being crafty to make sure your cash flow is as positive as possible, right? There's so many apps out there to find cheaper gas. I know gas prices are going up at this time. That's a little hard to do, but find some apps that are free that could help you find gas a little bit cheaper. You can also sign up for different rewards programs, hopefully that don't pay for anything. That's not the point of this, but be creative in trying to make your purchases going forward. Entertainment, if you buy tickets to events, search around. If you're buying airline tickets, search around. Take the time to look for those creative ways to save on expenses that you're going to have anyway, so that you can make your cash flow a little bit, have a little bit more cushion in your cash flow. Okay. Just some other quick little tips on how to save when you are shopping and doing those expenses. In some cases, brand name is not always the best thing to do. Generic is just as good and could be up to 50% cheaper than buying the brand name. I know we get into a rut and we think, oh, I have to buy this, I have to buy that because it's better. Well, the technology has changed a lot, and a lot of patents have moved forward to where a lot of the generics are offering the same quality, but at a cheaper price as the brand name. And then if you go to the ATM machine and pull out cash, find the ones that are, as it says here, native to your bank. That way you minimize the ATM fees, which again is something I had to work on when I was doing my budget many, many years ago, initial budget.
Also look for rewards deals. One of the popular drugstores across America, I won't name them, but they have a rewards card that is free, so that when you shop their generic items, not only are you getting a less expensive product, but then the rewards lead towards that too, with extra percentages off, so extra discounts at that point. And those are things that you can add to your phone rather than carrying a card now. You can actually have an app on your phone to be able to see those rewards too.
That's right. Don't buy lottery tickets. I know it's fun with the chance of winning, but that also adds up and adds to your budget. It's one thing to track with your budget as well. So there are times, going back to step number 2, I think 2 or 3, where it says track your expenses. This is one item that gets overlooked because it's usually done in cash, or it's done on a debit card in conjunction with buying your gas. So you really don't know that this part of that expense on your bank statement is for lottery tickets or other things, gum, cigarettes, tobacco, whichever it is that you're adding at the gas station. It's not just gas on that line item. It is a full gas plus X. So this is one of the things that needs to be tracked when it comes to managing your expenses or looking at your expenses. We talked about getting apps. If you're using apps to help you move about your daily life, try not to get too many of them that you have to pay for. Look for free alternatives and watch for those in-purchase expenses that may pop up out of nowhere. Find time to actually remind you to manage your subscriptions because they can sneak up on you and re-up in a year, 6 months, and you forget about them, and now you have an extra expense that you didn't budget for. Cancel when you're supposed to cancel. Avoid impulse shopping. This is something that is very useful to have an accountability buddy. If you are an impulse shopper, make sure you could set up any type of program with your accountability person that you want. I've heard of some where if you think you're going to spend over a certain dollar amount, let's just say $50 is your number, you have to first stop, call your accountability partner and say, I'm thinking of buying this. What do you think? Get their thoughts and then move forward from there. That's a way to kind of help you with impulse shopping if that's something that you do. If you do go out and enjoy the evening and you're, say, at a bar and you decide to open a tab, try not to tab and pay as you go, because that tab being open could just perpetuate and grow. And at the end of the night, you end up spending a lot more than what you thought you were going to spend initially.
And these habits that we're developing, they're so essential to reaching your goals. I love this about the impulse shopping. So one of the things that I taught my kids as they were coming through college and coming into adulthood, and I would do the same thing as a single mom, which is I would give myself an allowance every week. Maybe that allowance was $20, maybe it was $30, depending on how our budget looked. And then that was all I had, except for using my debit card for gas and maybe groceries and sticking to my list. If there was anything I wanted to do outside of that, like, go grab, dinner or lunch with friends, but I had $20 for the week. And when you look at a $20 bill or 21 and you say, well, maybe I want to do something else later in the week because that's all I have for the week. I'm not going to swipe my debit card. I'm just going to depend on that cash for the week. And then if I was lucky and I had some left over at the end of the week, maybe the next week I added to that. Or maybe I put it in a piggy bank and I just saved it for later, and it was my mad money, if you will. So think about that. That's so helpful, rather than just, hey, I'm going to swipe my debit card. I'm going to swipe my debit card. And then that balance just keeps getting lower and lower. And then we forget about, like Shalana said, some of those things that are automatic bills that are coming out. So we don't want to leave ourselves short.
So all of this is really habit building, right? It's if you're listening to this, what I believe you're wanting is to create a different financial world for yourself. And in order to do that, sometimes we have to really do the hard work to create different habits. And the biggest part of this budgeting piece is the spending habit, and changing how we spend, changing our relationship with money, not to the point where it's really uncomfortable. It's small incremental steps that you can take along the way that could make a big difference when you look back over your journey. You look back and say, wow, I really have come a long way. Just make small changes. A little bit goes a long way. We've talked about this in tracking the cash, and it's important. Everything comes down to knowing where your money is going, what's coming in and what's going out. Some of us have ways to do this, and it is keeping a spending journal. For me, it was a little notebook that I kept, and I manually wrote down everything. And then I upgraded to using Excel. I went digital. You can fast forward, Trish. I went digital and started using things like Excel and some other money tools. And now with today, there's so many online resources that are available to help you track your expenses, to help you keep up with your budget. Here are a few of them here. It's none that we are, just to go ahead and say this, we're not recommending or telling you to use these particular ones. These are just examples of what's out there that can be used. Trish and I also, as I mentioned before, we have a program or app and website that we use with our clients to help them develop and keep track of their budget as well. But the whole point is, don't just create your budget. Don't just go through this habit changing process. Now we have to keep track of, and now we have to keep it going. It's something that you have to have front of mind at least once or twice a month, so that you know that you are changing where you want to change.
And perhaps your bank has a tracking tool that's free to you, your bank or credit union. So check those out.
That's right. That's right. Once you have created a really good cash flow statement or cash flow process, and it's all positive and it's in a good cushion, now you can start looking at, well, what am I worth? What does that whole thing mean? We've heard the term net worth statement, but what exactly does that mean? What that looks like is you're tracking everything that you own and taking everything that you owe, netting the two together, and that is your net worth. That shows where you are financially from a balance sheet standpoint, if you will. And so in this example, the things that you own are things like your savings accounts, your bank accounts, your investments, your 401k, your IRA, your house, the value of your house. Your car has a value associated with it. On this example, everything equals to about $390,000. And then you subtract what you owe against that. Credit card debt, what you owe on your car, what you owe on your house, if you have any student loans. If you owe something to someone, it goes on this particular liability side of the equation. And you subtract the two together and we're left with, in this case, $83,000, a little over $83,000 for your overall net worth. Very important to note this when moving along your financial journey. How can we help? So again, Trish and I love what we do. We are full service financial advisors. I am a certified financial planner. And one thing that we do is we help people in this particular space as far as budgeting and creating that cash flow and your net worth. And we also help them with other things. I mean, investment management, retirement management, risk analysis. So do you have the right level of insurance to protect yourself and your family? Are your investments properly allocated and in the right risk, depending upon how you feel? And helping you meet all of your goals, taking all of that into consideration. One thing that we will do is educate you along the way as much as you want to be educated. But our goal is to help you go from here to there. Your goals will change over time. You can adjust what you want to reach anytime you want to. Situations change, life throws us curveballs, life throws us fastballs, life throws us easy balls. With all of that, we're able to make adjustments. But the point is to stay focused, stay connected, know who your accountability partner is, and help move along the path along the way. We are extremely thankful that you took the time to join us on this particular presentation. Our contact information is right here. If you would like to contact us for a one-on-one conversation, complimentary, definitely. If there are any questions, more than happy to take them right now. Hopefully this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Shalana. I know I personally got a lot out of it. I love the idea of shopping someone else's grocery list. That is like amazing, because I will pick up so much stuff that look yummy to me that are just mostly junk food and just stuff I want at the moment. So
That's
that
right.
really
That's
good.
right.
And I'm also an online impulse shopper, so I know that I have to figure out a solution around that.
Most of us are now that it's so easy to shop and all you have to do is say buy now because everything's saved in the account. That's where that accountability partner comes into play. So if you're shopping, 2:00 in the morning, stop for a minute, send someone a message and say, I'm thinking of making this purchase. What do you think? And then go to sleep and wait for them to answer before you hit send.
That's a brilliant idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just put it in your cart and just leave it without pressing go. Those of you who are attending here right now in our Zoom room, you are welcome to stay on and ask questions afterwards. I'm going to go ahead and just thank Flashpoint Financial Services one more time. Trish and Shalana, you are a gem in our community. And this has just been really such a great opportunity for the library to have these resources on hand. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.